Blessed are we when men shall revile you and persecute you, and shall say all manner of evil against you falsely, for my sake. Rejoice and be exceeding glad, for great is your reward in heaven, for so persecuted they the prophets which were before you. Matthew 5:3-12.
The Beatitudes are one of the most significant messages for humanity, a compass to guide us on the path of peace, eternal happiness, and one of the most powerful statements of virtue and true love. In a distant land, a mountain majestically rose against the blue sky. The people of the region spoke of a wise man, known for his words of peace and love, who had chosen this mountain to deliver an important message. The news spread through the neighboring villages and cities that the wise man, known as Jesus, would speak on the mountain. Men, women, and children of all ages and walks of life began to make the journey to hear him. Some sought healing, others sought wisdom, and yet others were moved by simple curiosity. When Jesus saw the crowd, he went up the mountain. Sitting under the shade of a large tree, he began to teach. Jesus' words were simple, yet profound, speaking of love, kindness, mercy, and how to live a life that was truly rich and meaningful. He spoke of the Beatitudes, saying, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth." The people listened in silence, absorbing every word. Jesus taught us about the importance of loving not just friends, but also enemies, and about the need to forgive in order to be forgiven. He spoke about the inner light that every person carries and how this light should shine to illuminate the way for others. As evening fell and the sun began to set, casting a golden light over the crowd, Jesus concluded his sermon. People began to disperse slowly, each taking with them the words they had heard. Many felt that their lives had been touched and transformed by these simple yet powerful teachings. And so, the Sermon on the Mount came to be remembered as a time of great enlightenment and wisdom, a teaching that crosses generations and continues to inspire hearts and minds in search of peace and understanding. People began to reflect on what Jesus had taught. His words about humility, mercy, and unconditional love prompted a profound change in many. Families and communities began to treat each other with more kindness and understanding. Even those who initially doubted or criticized Jesus' teachings could not deny the transformation they saw around them. In a small village, a man once known for his anger and bitterness began to show compassion and help his neighbors. In another town, a group that had previously lived in constant conflict found a way to coexist in peace and harmony, inspired by the words about reconciliation and forgiveness. Children, in particular, were quick to embrace the teachings of Jesus. They played and laughed together, not caring about the differences that once seemed so important. The Sermon on the Mount teaches us to practice kindness and mutual respect. Meanwhile, Jesus' disciples continued to spread his message, traveling to distant places and speaking of the love and peace he preached. They shared stories of the Sermon on the Mount, and people gathered to listen, often leaving these meetings deeply touched and inspired. Years passed, and the Sermon on the Mount became one of the most remembered and celebrated parts of Jesus' teachings. It was seen as a moment of divine revelation, where a simple man spoke eternal truths with such love and wisdom that it transformed not just those who heard him that day, but also many generations that followed. Thus, the legacy of the Sermon on the Mount continued to light the way for those seeking a more just, kind, and loving world, a timeless reminder of the transformative power of love and compassion in human life. As the influence of the Sermon on the Mount grew, the communities touched by its words began to change in ways no one could have predicted. People began to come together to help the less fortunate among them, remembering Jesus' words about caring for the poor and needy. In one city, a group of citizens came together to build a shelter for the homeless, inspired by Jesus' call to mercy and compassion. In another, a wealthy man, moved by the sermon, decided to use his fortune to feed and educate orphaned children. Jesus' message of peace also began to influence leaders and rulers. In some regions, kings and governors, who had previously ruled with an iron fist, began to seek justice and equity, remembering Jesus' words about the meek inheriting the earth. Although not everyone accepted or practiced his teachings, the seed of change had been planted. The Sermon on the Mount, with its simple yet profoundly powerful words, became a beacon of hope and inspiration, a reminder that true greatness lies in humility, love, and compassion, and that each individual has the power to bring light and change to the world. And so, future generations would continue to look back to that day on the mountain as a turning point, a moment when humanity was called to a higher path of being and living. The Sermon on the Mount transformed into a symbol of hope and inspiration for humanity. Its message of love, peace, and brotherhood continued to resonate through generations, reminding people that, even in the most difficult circumstances, it is possible to choose the path of compassion, kindness, and mutual understanding. The Sermon on the Mount carries a profound message, emphasizing justice, mercy, humility, and pure love. At the beginning of the sermon, Jesus presents the Beatitudes, which are declarations of blessing for groups of people, often seen as disadvantaged or in a disadvantageous position. These include the poor in spirit, those who mourn, the meek, those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, the merciful, the pure in heart, the peacemakers, and those persecuted for righteousness' sake. These blessings emphasize the inversion of worldly values, valuing humility, mercy, and the pursuit of justice. Jesus emphasizes the importance of loving enemies and forgiving those who harm us. He teaches that we should love not just those who are easy to love, but also those who challenge us. He takes the law a step further, focusing not just on actions, but also on intentions and attitudes of the heart. For example, he talks about anger and adultery, emphasizing that even thoughts and feelings are important. The sermon includes the Lord's Prayer, a model prayer that emphasizes God's holiness, the pursuit of his kingdom, daily dependence on his provisions, forgiveness, and deliverance from evil. Jesus also encourages trust in God for life's needs, advising people not to overly worry about the material. Jesus warns against judging others, emphasizing the importance of looking at one's own faults before criticizing others. The pursuit of righteousness. He encourages people to actively seek righteousness and to live according to the values of the kingdom of God, rather than focusing solely on earthly wealth or success. Jesus concludes with the parable of the two paths, a wide and a narrow one, encouraging the choice of the path that leads to life, although it is more difficult and less traveled. Cultivating the teachings of the Sermon on the Mount in our daily lives is a challenge that requires constant practice, reflection, and, above all, a commitment to personal transformation and strengthening our connection with God. Make a conscious effort to understand and feel what others are going through. This can involve actively listening, offering emotional support, and helping others in practical ways. Recognize your own limitations and shortcomings. Be open to learning from others, admitting mistakes, and asking for forgiveness when necessary. Work to forgive those who have offended you, remembering that everyone makes mistakes. Forgiveness can be a challenging process, but it is essential for living in peace with yourself and others. Try to love others without judgment or conditions. This includes offering kindness and assistance not only to friends and family, but also to strangers and even to people you might consider enemies. Seek to live in a way that is consistent with your values and beliefs. Be honest, accountable, and fair in your daily interactions. Stand up for what is right and just in your community and the world. This can mean getting involved in social causes, helping those in need, or simply acting justly in your personal and professional life. Practice generosity. Share your time, resources, and skills with those in need. Generosity is not limited to giving money. It can include volunteering, helping a neighbor, or providing emotional support to a friend. Cultivate inner peace. Dedicate time to meditation, prayer, or other spiritual practices that help you connect with God and find inner peace. Live simply. Avoid excessive concern with material possessions or success. Focus more on the richness of experiences, relationships, and personal growth. Be a positive example. Show through your actions and words the type of behavior you value. Be a role model of kindness, compassion, and integrity for others. Jesus calls us to look beyond the superficial norms of the world and seek a righteousness that comes from the heart. He challenges us to live not just according to the law, but with the spirit of grace and love. Reflecting on these teachings means asking ourselves, are we living the compassion, humility, and unconditional love that Jesus exemplified? Are we practicing mercy and forgiveness in our daily lives, not just in words, but in concrete actions? Being a Christian is not just a matter of identity or following a set of rules. It's a continuous journey of growth and learning, a journey where we are constantly called to become more like Christ in our thinking, speech, and action. The teachings of the Sermon on the Mount are challenging. They go against many of our human impulses and social norms. However, they also offer a path to a richer and more meaningful life, a life of true peace, joy, and deep love. I encourage each of you to meditate on these teachings. Ask yourself how you can apply them in your daily life. Where can you be more merciful? How can you practice love and humility more genuinely? In what areas do you need to seek justice and righteousness of heart? Remember, our faith is a journey, not a destination. Each step we take toward living these teachings brings us closer to God and the true purpose for which we were called. May we strive together to live up to the call we have received, reflecting the light and love of Christ in every word we speak and in every action we take.